I never expected that a casual Thursday evening would turn my life upside down. Work had been exhausting, and I decided to leave the office earlier than usual. The city streets were unusually quiet, the golden sunset painting long shadows across the asphalt. I thought a few extra hours at home would be relaxing. Little did I know, it would be the night I discovered everything I thought I knew about my wife was a lie. When I opened the front door, I heard laughter, the kind of laughter that sounded too familiar, too intimate. My heart skipped a beat. At first, I told myself it was just a friend visiting, maybe someone from her book club or a colleague. But then I noticed the faint glow of lights in our bedroom, the subtle click of heels on the wooden floor, and the unmistakable scent of her perfume, heavy and inviting, mixed with something unfamiliar. I crept toward the living room, careful not to make a sound, and froze. There she was, my wife, Emma, dancing closely with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, confident, dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of wealth and influence. They were too close, too familiar, their hands brushing against each other, laughing in a way that my stomach churned. I couldn't move. My mind raced. How long had this been happening? Emma turned briefly, and for a fleeting moment, our eyes met. There was no shock, no fear in her gaze, only a mischievous smile that made the betrayal even more unbearable. I felt an icy knot tighten in my chest. My wife, the woman I had trusted with everything, had been hiding a double life from me. I stepped back silently, trying to process what I had seen. My usual logical mind, the one that had helped me climb the corporate ladder, was failing me. I needed answers. I needed proof. But above all, I needed to understand why. Over the next few days, I watched Emma closely. At first, I pretended to be oblivious, engaging in normal conversation, making plans as if nothing had happened. But inside, I was calculating, observing every detail. Her texts, her calls, her sudden late-night emails. I set up discreet cameras in the main areas of our home, ensuring that I could capture the truth without tipping her off. It wasn't long before my suspicions were confirmed. Emma had been seeing the man from the party for months. There were messages I had never seen, invitations to dinners, small but telling gifts. Every detail pointed to the fact that my life as I knew it was an illusion. The worst part was realizing how carefully she had planned everything. Every explanation, every smile, every night spent with me was part of a performance. She had been leading a double life, enjoying the comforts of my home and the familiarity of our marriage while pursuing someone else. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Anger surged through me, but I held it back. I reminded myself that impulsive confrontation would only make things worse. I needed a plan, a strategy that would allow me to reclaim control both emotionally and legally. I consulted a friend, someone I trusted implicitly about the situation. We discussed options, confronting Emma, gathering more evidence, and securing our finances. It was clear that this man had influence and wealth, and I couldn't afford to be blindsided. The idea of taking legal action was daunting, but the thought of doing nothing was impossible.
With each passing day, the evidence grew. Emma's pattern became predictable. She would go out on seemingly innocent trips, return late, and act as if nothing had occurred. The cameras captured every movement, every moment of intimacy with her lover. It was painful to watch, but I needed clarity. I couldn't rely on assumptions anymore. One night, I decided to confront the man directly. I discovered his office, sent anonymous messages to gauge his response, and even placed discreet inquiries with people in his social circle. The truth slowly unfolded. He had been courting Emma for over a year, their encounters meticulously planned around my work schedule. They were careful, but not careful enough. The climax came unexpectedly. Emma invited me to a weekend event, claiming it was a work-related social gathering. I agreed, curious and cautious, knowing it could provide another opportunity to understand the depth of her deception. As we arrived, I saw him, waiting, smiling confidently, unaware that I had pieced everything together. Emma's demeanor was different that evening. She laughed more freely, danced closer to him, and whispered in ways she never did with me. My heart ached, but I forced myself to observe, to document, and to prepare. This wasn't just about confrontation. It was about reclaiming my life and teaching a lesson that would resonate. By the end of the weekend, I had all the evidence I needed. Every text, every encounter, every deception documented and ready. The weight of betrayal was heavy, but I was determined to turn it into a lesson, not just for Emma, but for myself. This was about closure, justice, and reclaiming my sense of self-worth. As I returned home, I reflected on the journey. The discovery, the pain, and the meticulous gathering of truth had transformed me. I realized that betrayal doesn't just shatter trust, it reveals strength you didn't know you had. Emma had underestimated me, assuming her charm and careful planning could hide the truth indefinitely. She was wrong. I knew the confrontation would come soon, and when it did, it would be strategic, decisive, and empowering. For now, I took a deep breath, knowing that the next chapter of my life would be written on my terms, not hers. The weekend after I'd collected every piece of evidence, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The truth was no longer a whisper in my mind. It was solid, undeniable, and powerful. Emma had no idea that I knew everything. She continued to act as if nothing had changed, laughing, preparing meals, and chatting casually, unaware that her world was about to shift. I decided that confrontation wouldn't come in anger. No shouting, no humiliation in front of others. It would be a calculated move, a lesson that would hit where it hurt, in her sense of control. I prepared everything meticulously. Printed photos, messages, videos, all arranged chronologically. I needed her to see the story of her own choices. That evening, I invited Emma to sit in the living room. I pretended it was a casual conversation, asking her about her day, her thoughts, her plans. She responded with warmth, completely oblivious. Then, slowly, I placed the first piece of evidence in front of her. A text message from her lover, flirtatious and revealing, staring back at her like a mirror. Emma's eyes widened, but she quickly tried to mask it with a smile. "What is this?" she asked, her voice slightly shaky. "It's what you've been hiding," I replied calmly. "Every late night, every trip, every little lie. It's all here." I continued to lay out the evidence, photos, videos, and messages that painted the full picture. At first, she tried denial, the classic defense mechanism. "This isn't what it looks like," she said, her tone trembling. "You're overreacting." But I remained composed. "I don't need excuses," I said. "I need honesty. I want you to understand the consequences of your choices." I watched as her confidence began to crumble. For months, she had believed she was untouchable, that her carefully constructed secret life would remain hidden forever. Now everything she had tried to conceal was exposed. Then came the most crucial moment. I explained how long I had known, how carefully I had observed, and how I had prepared for this confrontation. The shock in her eyes was palpable. For the first time, she saw the reality of her actions reflected in the consequences. "You thought you could manipulate me, that I wouldn't notice. But trust is not something that can be taken lightly, and respect is not earned through deceit." Emma was silent, her pride shattered. She realized that no charm, no wealth, no secret rendezvous could undo the damage she had caused. I could have reacted with anger, revenge, or public humiliation, but I chose a different path. A lesson. She had to confront her own choices and live with the consequences. not just for me, but for herself. I told her that our marriage would end, that I would not tolerate deception, and that I expected her to take responsibility for her actions. She nodded silently, tears streaming down her face, finally acknowledging the weight of her betrayal. Over the next few weeks, I managed the separation carefully. I secured our finances, organized living arrangements, and ensured that she understood the boundaries. I didn't seek revenge in the traditional sense. Instead, I let reality teach the lesson. Without me, without her lover constantly present, without the comforts she had taken for granted, she began to experience the consequences of her choices firsthand. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding myself. The pain of betrayal was intense, but it also became a catalyst for growth. I rediscovered hobbies, strengthened friendships, and reconnected with parts of myself that had been neglected during the years of marriage. The experience had left scars, but it also left resilience, clarity, and a renewed sense of self-worth. Emma eventually moved out, and the affair ended, not with a dramatic confrontation with the other man, but through the natural unraveling of her choices. She had lost the trust, the home, and the stability she had taken for granted. Months later, I found myself reflecting on the entire ordeal. Betrayal is a profound teacher. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths, to recognize hidden strengths, and to assert boundaries that protect your life and dignity. I had been hurt deeply, yes, but I had also grown stronger, wiser, and more self-assured.
Sometimes the best revenge isn't humiliation or retaliation. It's living well, reclaiming your life, and letting the consequences of betrayal serve as a life lesson. Emma had made her choices, and she lived with them. I had made mine, and I was free. In the end, the night that had seemed like the beginning of devastation became the turning point of empowerment. I realized that betrayal, while painful, could also be transformative. The man my wife had chosen could never give her what she lost in our marriage: trust, respect, and genuine connection. And for me, the future was open, unburdened, and filled with possibilities that no deceit could touch.